Welcome everyone. Welcome to tonight's Operations and Assets Committee meeting. I hope you all got to hear the announcements at the beginning. Before we begin the meeting, we have a number of people from the public who wish to speak. Are you happy if I just go round the room one after the other? So just remind you have 3 minutes. Connor, would you like to go first?
Sorry, no, so it's on me. So.
I thought I was talking on the agenda piece.
We've been just in discussion as to whether you can speak as a member of the public.
That's what was planned.
That wasn't.
Agenda.
I've rocked up to plenty of meetings where I'm not entirely sure if I was actually on the committee and just chipped in when I've wanted to. So there's kind of a precedent for that. I think I'll just assume when we get to that item, unless you want to move it forward or something, but when we get to that item, because we might want to, there might need to be a bit of back and forth. I don't need to suspend standing orders for that.
It's fine.
Yeah, fine. Giuseppe, so the same goes for you. You and I speak when we come to your item.
And for these two as well.
And you want to speak on those items as well.
We both registered for our 3 minutes.
That's public.
Members of the public on the Maidenbrook water lease.
So yeah, so if you have your 3 minutes now, and then Giuseppe, you'll have to speak when we come to that item. Yeah. Okay. So
Are you not approving your minutes and everything first?
well, we usually have the public speak
Public speak first.
and then we start the meeting.
Joe Pearson, I was parish clerk for Chedden Fitzpaine from 2011 to 2021. Waterleys, I call it Waterleys as that estate, I believe was built out in year 2000, and they're predominantly the 20-year public open space would run. The developers supported the maintenance for that for 20 years. For the last, well, from 2015 onwards to 2021, while I was clerk, I was forever chasing adoption managers who had to play musical chairs. I identified all the public open spaces. Joseph Galicia at the time was the public open spaces man, and they generally mowed the grass, which in the first 10 years, your estate is nice and low, and any hedges or trees are quite low. But of course, if you leave things for 10 years, trees grow. If you 15 or 20, you get a lot of objection and problems from local residents who kept coming to me. So I was forever on the case, trying to help as clerk, trying to find out rules. I'm not a planning officer, so I was learning planning. I don't know what happens at the end of the 20 years, as in 2020. Did it automatically transfer to then Taunton Deane Borough Council or said Somerset West and Taunton, or did it still run on? But I believe from current discussions, there's new information that's come out this last week or so, that the developers are still being contacted. Last thing I did in 2020 was to get £110,000 out of Bovis from Exeter to replace gabions as upstream of the attenuation pond. Now that took a year to get those gabions replaced. The whole bank was falling in. It was the back of 2 residents' gardens. So I've got the background knowledge. I can't see if you've got a 3 minutes up there. Can't see the time. I don't want to say
3 minutes.
I don't want to say too much. I'm here if you want to ask me questions. I know the background. I'm not a legal person. The planning know that, but I can put more detail on it if you'd like to ask me later on.
Okay. Thank you very much. And
I'm Susanna Andrew, and I'm a resident of Maidenbrook. So really, I'm wearing that hat this evening. I've been a resident there for 8 years. And when I moved into that estate, I was so impressed with the condition it was in as far as its upkeep was concerned. The grass cutting, the cutting back along the streams. We have the streams that go through Maidenbrook, and they were tended frequently and kept clear. But certainly over the years that I've been there, it's deteriorated rapidly. And I think this is when I got to know Jo and the work that she was doing on all this. She is a wonderful point of reference for all the history attached to this and the all the documentation, I think, that's gone with it. I'm an observer. I'm a resident. And if, as I say, I can contribute anything to the rest of the evening, then please do ask me.
Okay, thank you very much. Right. Well, with that concluded for the public session, we can now officially start our meeting. So first item, we've received apologies from Councillor Stainthorpe. Have you received apologies from anyone else?
Okay.
Item number 2, declarations of interest. So anything coming up on tonight's agenda that councillors have an interest they need to declare. Councillor Fernandez.
I'm ward member for Manor and Tangier, so it's the about Galmington Gate.
Is there anything else? Councillor Ellis?
Well, I'm divisional member for the Bishop's Hall and Taunton West, which Galmington, possible Galmington Gate would reside.
Right, thank you very much. Anything else? Councillor Tully? Okay, just left for me then. So I am need to declare that I am the ward member for Wogarton and Wellsprings. We've got the issue of the baseball team coming up, and later on at the end with the Wogarton allotment, I do rent a plot at the Wogarton allotments. So that's my declaration of interest there. Okay, item number 3, minutes. So first we have 2 sets to agree upon. The first one was from January because we had to make a couple of amendments. The first one was to change Councillor Furman's name, change the E to an I, and the other one was to include Councillor Ellis's objections to the diesel vehicle. Are you happy that they have all been included? Let me see, Councillor Furman's name has been correctly spelled. Are you happy for me to sign these? Can I have a proposal? Have a second. Thank you. All those in favour? Lovely. Please sign each page. Right, and then we now have the set from the last meeting on the Thursday, the 6th of March. Is there anything anyone wishes to mention about the minutes? Okay. I was just going to quickly. Can we do matters arising from the minutes? Just sort of wanted to, because I noticed from the we had a section on there or an item on the S106 funding. We were going to apply for the S106 funding. We had any feedback from that yet?
I'm all lecturer.
No. Okay. On the last agenda, we voted to apply for S106 funding from north of Taunton. I'm just wondering if we, and this was to do investigation work on building 1. Yeah, that was it. But have we received anything? I haven't heard. Okay, all right. We'll chase that one up. Right. Are we happy with the minutes? We have Simon. Thank you, Seconder. All those in favour, show their hands. Thank you very much. Right. So, item number 4, the forward plan. Has anyone got any comments that they'd like to make on the forward plan? I'm glad to see the notice board reports coming up because that was the other thing we discussed in the last meeting, which I was going to raise, but I can see it's coming up for the next meeting. Nobody's got anything else? Yeah, okay. Item number 5, agenda request submitted by Councillor Giuseppe Boccini on the Maidbrook Estate Public Open Space. Now then, this report is author is Marcus. So are you happy to? Or who would like to go first?
I mean, I'm easy. If you want to do your background, I can fill it in, or I'll speak and then you can. Yeah, it's fine. No problems at all.
Councillor, just a second.
Thank you. Can I just ask, if this was approved tonight, does that mean it's approved, or has it got to go to full council next week for approval? Just double checking.
Depends what we approve. I think the amount of money was probably, it's not from an earmarked reserve, is it?
No, so it would be able to be approved by yourself. I guess.
I just wanted to know if there was more further stages after this evening, but that's right. Cool. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. So yes, as you can see from my agenda request, this relates to the Maidenbrook estate, Waterleys estate within the Maidenbrook ward. I would encourage councillors to potentially suspend standing orders later to ask Joe any questions that you have, because Joe has been involved in Cheddar Fitzpaine area for a substantial period of time and probably could tell you with their eyes closed and from back of her head. So all the detail, any further detail would suggest doing that. So I brought this forward. So the issue with Maidenbrook and Waterleys has been going on, as Joe's already alluded to, for a number of years. The adoption has unfortunately not taken place in the time that it was meant to have taken place, and that there was allocated funding from the developer to maintain the estate, which ran out, and I believe in 2023. So obviously the adoption has not taken place, which was meant to be done by Somerset Council for various reasons over that 20-year period, and we're in a situation now where the estate is left in limbo. Somerset Council don't appear to have been maintaining as you can see from the this is not even half of it, the correct areas. There's always been a reminding the council anyway. I've made countless phone calls over the years, as I suspect Joe has as well, to remind them that their obligations to the attenuation ponds behind residents' homes, which creeps into their back gardens, and various other bits and bobs. But unfortunately now, obviously, that funding has now run out, and it seems that the estate is left in limbo. Thankfully, the adoption process seems to be moving, but there's no guarantee how quickly that adoption process will take place. It could be 12 months, it could be 2 years. And I am requesting that, as this is now within the town council area, and precedent has already been set with other areas of the town council area that the town council aren't responsible for, is to bring Maidenbrook back to its, back to its pride, back to its whatever it used to be, the top level best, because unfortunately at the moment it isn't. It's impassable. It does obviously impinge on people's back gardens, and various other things going on. And these are just some of the photos of what it is. But as you see from the maps, which you've all got, it is quite a substantial area. And what I would like to see is that this council supports the residents in that area, bringing back to its former glory. So I have my suspicions that it will need a mixture of both, a private contractor and the community payback team, because this particular area here behind the fence, that behind the gate, that gate actually goes inwards and you won't be able to open that gate. That needs specialist machinery to clear all of this. And the EA do some bits around the river, which they are responsible for, but that wouldn't even touch this. So that specific area that you see on the screens behind you, that will need some specialist machinery to clear that. There are other areas of the estate where I think the community payback team could use this as an ongoing project until the land adoption is complete. And there's continuous work there for them if they're looking for things to do, just to keep on top of it after any work is complete. And then Somerset Council then would obviously do their thing once they've adopted it. But it is a massive issue for our residents. And I'm hoping that you will be able to support this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Giuseppe. I think I might bring Marcus in at this point to give us the officer take on this, and then we can go to question
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, councillors. I hope you have a chance to consider the report. Obviously, I've had some background in dealing with various issues and requests made by residents, probably since the town council has been in existence around this, and sort of trying to peel the onion and find out a bit more about what's going on here. Because obviously, I think the estate being 25 years old, it's not clear why it hasn't been adopted up until the estate. Obviously, more of the modern estates that have been sprung up in Taunton have management companies that charge residents to maintain open spaces. I did have a chat with Inland Waterway Association that did some clearance on behalf of the former Cheddar Fitzpaine Parish Council a number of years ago. So really, it's been, I would say that we do receive frequent contact from local residents asking the town council to take action where possible. As you can see in the report, Somerset Council confirmed the open spaces team said it's not adopted by them. They continue to do the grass, hedges, shrubs, and clear ditches, but any additional work such as the trees, the pond area, they won't do that further work, as it's not land that they they've adopted and own. And there was some suggestion, they said, until the parish takes responsibility for that. But in further research, obviously we see that there is an expectation that Somerset Council will adopt this open space. There's a couple of hurdles, and as I've said in my report, I've sent emails around to various officers to try and find out more details to where we are with this, in anticipation, obviously, the agenda request forthcoming tonight. So I have had an update from the developer that said they have been trying to progress the transfer for some time now. There are a couple of issues preventing that progress, namely riverbank erosion. So they have engaged a company to do some ground investigation work to inform design of a root block wall to stabilise the bank in this particular location, and also as scour prevention in a couple of other locations. And they're waiting a quotation from GeoGrow to complete this work. And all being well, this will be completed during the drier months when the flow levels in the watercourse are lower. And then they have said there's an issue with an encroachment issue. The land in question is inaccessible and would not benefit the public in any way. So our intention would be to exclude this piece of land from the transfer. So then the email I've had from the assets team at Somerset Council, so we've got them talking to the developer, which is positive. And they've said that to progress the adoption, our legal services advised back in 2023, land registry compliant plans must be agreed in respect of both sites, and issues concerning a gradient wall and encroachment to be addressed. They were not able to locate a copy of the Section 106 agreement. That's an update there in terms of the developer and Somerset Council. And just in terms of the proposed way forward, I put a couple of recommendations there at the end of the report. So 9.1, obviously the landowner have now been contacted. I could go back and they've said in their email, sorry, that they're happy for us to get community payback to do the work if possible. But I do understand from Giuseppe there's some concern about community payback perhaps not having the specialist skills that are going to be required with some of this overgrowth and tree work that's there. But I haven't specifically asked them to carry out the work themselves, so that could be something, as they are the landowner, that you might wish to instruct us to do tonight. And the 9.2 is about lobbying Somerset Council to undertake all of the required maintenance in the estate rather than the limited amount due to this unadopted status. And then, as you say, if as the area is awaiting adoption, we don't have a timescale on that, whether we ask community payback or look to seek to use sort of the stewardship funding that's been precepted for this year to supplement that. Because I think we've spoken internally with our open spaces team, and the level of work that would be required, he said it would take his team several weeks to clear that, and they just can't take that number of bodies from obviously standing up a new team away from the BAU stuff to go and concentrate on this one area, so it wouldn't be able to be done in-house. unfortunately. And I just said in there, if you do commission a one-off clearance, it doesn't commit town council to an ongoing liability for the land. Obviously, you could potentially later down the line, if you were so wished and as part of devolution, look to seek, once Somerset Council have adopted it, sorted out things with land slips and gave you a more, which sound a bit frightening to take on in the current situation. You may want to add this to potential future land that you should take on under that kind of stewardship mechanism. But yeah, thank you, Chair. Any questions?
Yeah, are there any questions from the members? Councillor Pennell?
Right, thank you. I am disgusted to hear what I'm hearing now. I was the division county councillor for there, and they said the only problem they had where they couldn't adopt was problems with drainage under, and I'm trying to think which road it was on, and that was the only item to stop it being, and you probably know about this, Giuseppe, that it was a drainage problem. It's the only problem. So it could have been adopted, I'm talking 10 years ago, which I find that is totally unacceptable. And again, the Somerset Council is now trying to load it onto us. And I'm afraid that's not right. I agree with Giuseppe, I understand, and I understand what they're talking about. But to me, it's wrong. The people who are responsible were Somerset Council. They should have made sure that it was adopted. They've known it hasn't been. That worries me. The other thing, you was talking about the riverbank. There isn't a riverbank there. There's a canal bank, and that comes under the Canal and Rivers Trust, and they should be doing that work.
Excuse me, it's Maiden Brook.
It's a stream.
Sorry,
It's
river.
Stream, sorry, wrong
and
way.
it runs north-south.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Chair. I do understand what you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Does it feed into the canal?
No, it goes underneath it. It goes,
Yeah.
that gate that's the brambles behind, there's a section of brook there is actually in the floodplain for the EA. The section north where the Gabions are is in the public open space area. But when it gets through the attenuation pond, it goes down underneath the cow and goes past, and it goes to Bath Pool. So at that point it joins in with Westmonton Parish.
Can I quickly ask, if this area is cleared, does it become more accessible to local residents? Would they use
Yes, it can.
walk along? Because I noticed there's a bit of an open area as well, just behind the Crown Medical. Is that somewhere where residents can go and sit and then use?
Yes, you would go into Waterleys and there's houses, the even houses 2 to 12, and then you turn right through a footway in Cranes Close. There's two tall trees, and then from there you could turn right and walk back into it.
Yes, so there's the area that's just behind the
Yes.
the chiropractors and that.
Yeah.
So that's all.
Yeah, it could be used accessible.
And it's clearly inaccessible at the moment.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Any other questions?
So, maybe a comment, then maybe a question at the end of this. No, I mean, I think we have to help. My every instinct says we actually need to do something to help our residents out. It's part of our town. It's not their fault that this has taken so long and it still isn't resolved. I think I agree. We should also be putting pressure on Somerset Council and the developer to, we'll have to keep tabs on this. This will run, won't it? This will be a long run thing. But I just do think we're the only ones with the gumption to actually pull our fingers out and do something most of the time. So we might as well act on that, because it isn't residents' fault that this is all dragged on. So I think I'd be in favour of some combo of, private contractor and the community payback team, whatever it takes to do so the idea is they do a sort of a big sort. We basically engineer a big sort out which will solve some of the issues confronting residents for a period of time, whilst we're putting pressure on the various parties whose responsibility it actually is, in the hopes that they sort themselves out. I kind of think if we've got the money sat in an account and it's clearly within our strategic objectives that everyone deserves a good quality of living in every neighbourhood. It's not their fault, the residents. So I think we ought to show willing and do something. So basically the money from the developers stopped
Is that right? And it's so that's sort of 20.
It's sometimes 20 years.
20 years, yeah, yeah. I don't suppose they would be willing to contribute to some of our costs, but in any case, I think we should help residents out here. It's part of our town. They've been let down.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree. I think that, you know, we should, while it's waiting adoption, consider that commissioning, the one-off clearance. However, I'm just conscious about that we've got the money set aside for coach stewardship, and obviously that's a huge, massive area at the moment that's going to take quite a bit of money. It's just making sure that we still have that money available.
You can
Marcus?
Marcus.
Yes, Chair. Obviously, I think we precepted 150,000 for community stewardship, which is set aside in an EMR. We didn't use any of that in the first year. We precepted a lesser amount this year, 50,000 in this year's budget. We haven't drawn down yet. Obviously, I think the progress with that has slowed down to an extent in terms of conversations with the developer there about some of the assets and some of the costs that we can expect about purchasing some of those parcels of land and developing the assets required. I know we are expecting further updates on that from Simon Fox and the developers in the next few weeks, hopefully. But I don't believe most of that is around adopting parks and things that they've already set out. So I'm not sure how much of that additional cost would be required for that budget, but it is something to bear in mind. Obviously, yeah, it was precepted to deal primarily with the Commy Trove and Norfolk Road, so that's definitely.
Thank you, Marcus. In that case, I think that if we can see, I think we can up to a maximum of 15,000 as an interim solution. So it is make for residents. Absolutely, in while we're waiting for that adoption from Somerset Council, and in the meantime, we'd lobby Somerset Council to say, look, we're stepping in to actually achieve this and for our residents, but actually this is your issue, and we need to make sure that it's a swift conclusion. Thanks, Chair.
So, just one question I was going to say is we say we can't do it ourselves in-house because we haven't got the manpower, but if we had community payback team doing most of it, could we not use some of our team to finish off?
Possibility, Chair, but I would need to have a look and evaluate how much work that entails and balance it with work we're already committed. And you know, is within our normal business as usual, because we can't afford to negatively impact that by taking on work that may be beyond we're able to deliver properly.
Okay, Councillor Tulloch.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but there is a heck of a lot of work to be done down there, and the amount you're actually quoted, it's not going to be enough. I'm correct, aren't I? There's so much work needs to be done, and maybe we ought to try it the other way. To tell Somerset Council they give us the land and then we look after it, give it to us, and that then also get it adopted at the same time, making a legal agreement that they get it adopted and the land belongs to us. It's not an unusual thing because Westmont are doing the same thing. They're adopting all the open spaces. You know, we're spending money, public money, on something which we don't control. In fact, I was going to bring something up and I won't now. I think at another occasion where we're spending money and it's out of our control. I think that we need someone to go to Somerset Council and say, this is what we want, and we know it's a mess. But to use our money, we've got to get something back in return for it. And the residents will be better off. Thank you.
Thank you. Giuseppe, and very quickly, can I ask you a question? In your estimation, how much do you think it would cost?
I'm afraid I couldn't. I'm only estimating by looking at the size of those bushes and the trees and the work that needs to be done. I think Ray is probably correct that £15,000 won't cut it, but it will help. like Tesla said, every little helps. So I'm not complaining it Deane brand. Ultimately, long term, yes, I'd love to see that public open space in the ownership of Taunton Town Council. I think it's only right, and I think Taunton Town Council will do a better job than historically the county and that has done. But yeah, so I also want to put on record my thanks to Marcus for the work that he has done on this, because we started these conversations only a couple of months ago to really try and get down to the bottom of this, and it's moved on at a pace. So I really want to thank Marcus for the work that he's done.
Marcus.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Fashini. Just on the estimate, we did get a quotation from a landscaping company for the pond area that we were looking at addressing, because we had evidence of prior parish council work in clearing that. And then when we got the quotation done, as it says out in the report, Somerset Council came along the week after and cut a bit of it back, so it sort of started again. So I said, wait till we've got an open spaces team in place and then we can look at it again. But they quoted around 3,000 just for that. So I sort of extrapolated and said, you know, for the whole area, perhaps around 12 to 15,000. But until we get the quotes that we're required to do, we just get 3. We can't really know the true value, but I think around 15,000 would be correct. Just in terms of, obviously, if there is a request to adopt, that'll have to come back and go to full council. If that's something you want us to investigate, to see how that would impact on the open spaces team in terms of having that whole estate to build into their rotas and things like that. So that's obviously something we could go away and look at, but obviously not a decision for tonight.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm going to bring in Connor. Come on then. You wanted to say something.
Hello. Yeah. Bit of food for thought as well. I know obviously as you've spoken about a certain amount to spend in the area, but it might even be worth looking at a. I know obviously further down the pipeline, actually taking on this plot of land, you know, from Somerset Council further down the line, but actually this individual issue what Giuseppe's brought to the table, you know, I know the estate alone to be looked after by Somerset Council in the pipeline, but this actual individual area of land that's really getting left alone, maybe that might be worth looking into actually Taunton Town Council taking just that section on, because then, you know, instead of us de-weeding it now and in 12 months time the weeds come back and we're like, this is an ongoing issue, as a council we can overlook it and go, right, we've got a plan in place for the next 5 years because this is our land and we'll invest our money in this land because it's ours. Just an idea. I don't know whether
I actually think that it's something that does need to come to the town council. It's within our boundaries and it's an open space, and it's something that the residents use and appreciate. So I do think it's something that's part of our strategy. Councillor Tully, you wanted to come?
Yeah, in fact, what's just been said is correct, because we can get it all nice and cost, and I think it's looking at 25,000 at least, if not more. I really do. There's such a lot of land there. But then what happens after that? With the county to decide to look after it, they won't. They'll leave it. We've done it once. They'll do it again, and then they're back to square one. You know, we've got to get something in return. But yes, it needs to be done badly.
Yes, and I also think that if we do this, then Somerset Council will say, well, you've done it now, so you must just carry on. Yes, we are pretty much committing ourselves down that route. So there is that to bear in mind. I forgot, was it Suzanne?
Suzanne. Thank you. Yes. Apart from making the area look better, I think one of the really important issues, and it must concern you as well, is drainage, because we are in an area with water. And when you see the way that these waterways are clogged now, including the pond, which was the old sheep dip, with the excessive water that we get nowadays, you know, streams, we could actually end up with really bad situations with some flooding as well. So I think that's an issue that really needs to be brought to the fore, not necessarily always just seeing as improving the appearance of something. It has to be functional as well. And drainage is very important on that area.
Yes, there's a large spend. I mean, your report is committing us to 15,000. What happens if it does go over? Yeah, but what happens? I mean, do we just do up to 15,000 then just have to stop, or?
Chairman, you can answer that if you like. So we'll get 3 quotes, and then if the quotes are wildly beyond what you have allocated, we'll have to come back.
I mean, summary, I think, yes, I take your point. We're spending our money on something we don't own. That's something that should be done by somebody else. But I guess the way I see it is we're spending town council money on town council residents. Yeah, what I don't really see what the objection is really. So I'm happy. Joe, did you want to come back very quickly?
Just one other quick thing about the brooks and the flow of water. That's the main reason for clearing the land. But I forget the date, 2018, 19, something like that. Although I was clerk, I was also a volunteer for the Inland Waterways, and it was then that I got their group to come. So from the Sheep Pond, which is it comes down Maiden Brook under the A3259 and comes down to the attenuation pond, but there's another section that does 3 sides of the square, but there's channels that go off. We cleared all of those right back. So I've got those photographs where it's pristine. So it wasn't that long ago that we got the brooks cleared. I think all that can be done by payback team.
Yeah.
It's the trees that are probably in the some of the trees that, you know, it just depends how far you want to go. So you probably could do it within that budget to get it back to basics. But say the community have done their bit, and I think that's where now it's like, well, we weren't doing it because we thought the borough council, the district council, Somerset West and Taunton, or somebody else might do it. But that's why I'm not doing it anymore.
And I think if we get it back to a really nice state, surely ongoing maintenance will be the cheapest option after that.
Yeah.
Much easier.
Sure we'll be able to do that within, and that's it. Just this regular maintenance, just a bit of point
Potentially.
twice. I mean,
There are economies.
we're spending £15,000 to cut back, what, 15 years worth of growth?
Yes.
Once we've got it done, keep maintaining it, we can prevent that.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to that, I do think there's actually a role for community payback to play in the ongoing maintenance.
Yeah.
It's a massive, there's lots of open space there. So if they're looking for something to do one weekend, then I'm sure Marcus keeps in touch and says, actually, this now could do with a bit of help, could you? And it's done, kind of thing, until it's adopted.
I think we're ready to move on.
Just before, Chair, can I one thing? Just one quick word. If you clear that brook very well, make a good job of it, Joe knows where it comes next, and it floods my area.
Bath pool.
Yes, that's Monton Parish Council. Yes. So,
That is Westmonton Parish Council area.
that'll be their next meeting. Well, I'm happy. So coming to the councillors to consider and to vote on, I'm not sure 9.1 is worth it. The landowner, Bogus History, are contacted and requested. We've contacted them. They're clearly not going to do anything, are they?
I mean, they are doing some work, as I said, they're dealing with the erosion issues and appointed contractors to do, as you know, a wall, as I said, but they didn't say that they would be, they just said that they would be happy for us to arrange for community payback. Obviously,
And for us to work, do the work.
yes, yeah, so they give them permission, but I mean, I can go back to them and say, would, you know, the councillors asked, would you consider maintaining it until it's adopted, but I'm not sure what the answer would be.
So, right, okay, so, okay, we may as well include 9.1 because there's always the opportunity that, or still the option that they might come back and do something. 9.2, definitely lobby Somerset Council to want to take all the required benefits and look at its adopted status and actually adopt it. Put pressure on them to adopt it and then pass it on to us, potentially. And 9.3, well, I'm happy to support this. Because I think, as I said, spending town council money on town council residents. Yeah. I think that's. So I'm happy to propose it. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Fred. All those in favour? Yeah. We'll go with that. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
I should look forward to picnicking. Next time I'm visiting my doctors.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Well, can we go ahead also with Somerset Council and ask if they will hand it over to us? Get that in motion before they forget it again.
Yeah, I agree. So, and I'm conscious I didn't read out the recommendation, but being voted doesn't matter, does it? It was all unanimous.
Yeah.
No read.
Yes. So just for those listening, we did unanimously agree to all three recommendations on this report. Right.
Thank you very much.
You are free to leave if you don't have to.
Thank you, councillors.
Unless you're interested in taking up paddle tennis.
That was.
Paddle tennis, that's the next item.
Tennis.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
And down the road.
Should we make sure it's right? You move that at the bottom right. And then we just need to move the page. That's down this. I need to try to do that next. Yeah. You just go into the pages. Yeah. Okie dokie. Hello, everybody. I should have bought a paddle racket like Nick O'Donnell actually says. And I should have come in a pair of shorts as well, but no, not this evening. Right, I'm proposing to want to bring paddle to Taunton. There's a massive growth for this sport, not only in the UK, but across the globe. This PowerPoint this evening's been put together by the LTA. I've read heavily into it. It dates back to the early stages of 2024, but really the stats after the presentation, I can kind of tell a little bit more in depth about these statistics. I'll pretty much only talk about the UK because that's really the main focus, and then I'll go back into the focus on Taunton afterwards. So interest in sport is growing significantly across the globe, and one of the new major hotspots of paddle is the United Kingdom, and it's paddle's rapidly growing momentum on a global scale and steadily evolving into a widespread international sporting phenomenon. So we go on to the next one, number 10. Perfect. So this just shows in last year alone, this is across the globe, but 2,500 new paddle clubs opened. And just in the window of 2023 to the early stages of 2024, it went up nearly 27%. So you can see already that the slow growth early stages nearly to 2026 to 2022 was slightly steady, but the 27% growth in just under a year is pretty substantial. Next one, number 11, please. Almost 6,000 new paddle courts were built globally, which gained an extra 16% between 2023 to the late of 2024. But even greater growth is expected for 2024 leading into 25, which is dead correct. Next one, number 14. Sorry, because this Zoom thing at the bottom's in the way, I can't actually see the number, so that's why we just click in. So the multiple factor is driving paddle's continued expansion is the accessibility. I'll just talk just in case people can't see it on the screen already. Unlike many other sports, most people can play regardless of their physical shape or age and without a lot of specialised equipment or previous experience. Social component, paddle is not just a sport, but also a social recreation activity. You can enjoy with friends or use to make new people. Investment, ongoing investment with high net worth individuals and investment funds accelerating global expansion on the sport globally, but also what the actual sport brings to a local town as well. So a bigger footfall for people wanting to come to the town but also in local shops, sports shops. It will be a new sport that they can bring into their shop. So it's a new range of products for people to sell in the shops too. Also, the technology is constantly offering new tools to help spread paddle content and new apps to ease the organisation of matches, leagues and tournaments. So one of the biggest issues in paddle at the moment is there's not enough courts, which leads people to, you know, not be able to play paddle as much as they like. But the actual push for paddle is crazy on social media, even Google. In the last year alone, it's up 39% in just searches. So you can imagine how many searches on Google worldwide. Just the word paddle's gone up 39%, which is rather big. Number 17, please. Okay, so this scale here is currently shown. So one of the main countries that currently run paddle, that's crazy, is Spain and Sweden. This shows you the boom, so this is kind of showing where it's kind of doing well at the moment. But the interest is France, Mexico, Germany, and the UK. And currently, how the position that's in showing that there's a lot of interest, a lot of engagement, and also with, like I said, with the people wanting to play, but not enough courts. It's kind of not slowing down the process, but it's people holding people back. Please. Just raising awareness in the country with great potential. As I said again, the big three, which is UK, France, and Germany, United States, and Mexico. So as you can see, that's already aware of quite a big area that's wanting to push for paddle to get bigger. Thanks. So this is currently showing where the UK is and currently what they're expecting by the time it gets to 2030. So the UK is steadily progressing along the curve, and we anticipate a potential acceleration in the latter half of 2024 or even the beginning of 2025, which from experience this year, having gone to a few clubs in Bristol and Exeter, they are crazy. Literally, they are booked out 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and it's constant. People can't book in enough courts. It is, I've never seen anything like it. But you know, even the content side of things on Instagram, social media, it's just booming. Number 21, please. So it's the last 3 slides, and there's just a few points, and then I'm happy to take comments if that's good. Meanwhile, the UK is on the brink of significant growth. So the LTA is currently the overhead of paddle. So yeah, LTA, Lawn Tennis Association, and then because paddle's obviously taken over, they needed that overhead of the association. So LTA is that overhead. Just in the last year, they've actually created now a website for paddle because there was so much engagement for paddle in the UK. And potential acceleration in the latter half of 2024, beginning of 2000 is anticipated. As I said again, from 2016 to 2023 has been a growth of 43%. So that's cool. 39 is that's a big jump. Sorry. Sorry. So the last 2 pages. Thank you. Okay, so this one is kind of showing the major infrastructure when opening a club or even a court. So first of all is the location. Choosing a good location is a key step for successfully run a paddle club. So whether that's on an original court, whether that's on a grass area that can become a foundation, but also consultation in those areas is really key to make sure it doesn't impact current areas, to impact people, residents who say cannot afford to pay for a court. It still gives them access to, you know, if there are courts that aren't being used for free, then that might be a positive or it might be a negative for them. So it's worth consultation, as we've raised before. Obtaining permits can sometimes be costly and time-consuming process. So aka with the planning side of things, but also just the overall, you know, consultation and also for granting. Civil work and the courts and the maintenance. So obviously going forward, the courts is one of the things is obviously really important, and really want to make sure that it's as efficient as possible, but also, as I already know, with the Taunton Green tennis courts, with the booking procedures, super easy. And I had no issues with it at all, and I find it quite easy. And also the maintenance, as our Taunton Green courts are already, they're really well maintained, and I've never had an issue with, if any issues, they get sorted straight away. So I have no problems with the side of the maintenance side of things, with in-house or even going forward. And the next one, 40. And this is kind of, I know it dates back to 2023, so, and this is done in dollars a little bit. So, but this is kind of showing what a paddle court looks like. So the paddle court is currently a tennis court cut in half that has 2 courts. So you can fit 2 courts in 1 tennis court. So the footfall per tennis court is double. And if there's 4 people playing on 1 paddle court, for example, that's 8 people towards possibly 4. So yeah, it's double. But this is kind of the setup. If you want lighting, to be honest, I don't think people playing in the dark would be a good idea. But yeah, this is kind of a ballpark figure for 2023. But I'd be looking in further in a minute when I'll just say something about the details. That'd be great. So that's the presentation done on that side of things. There's a few points I just want to raise. So what paddle will do is bring more footfall to for the town. It puts Taunton back on the map for sports and progressional sports, and also it, like I said, currently at the moment the gap between Bristol and Exeter, it's 1 small court in Deane, and the population between Exeter and Bristol 650,000 people, and you could say roughly from engagement and statistics, there's roughly about 40,000 people who play racket sports. So in that window, there is a need, in my opinion, for impact for paddle, because currently nowhere between Bristol and Exeter you can play paddle at all. More than 400,000 adults and juniors took up to the court at least once during the last year. Up from 129,000 in 2023, the figures have grown massively. In 2019, just 15,000 people played at least once, but by 2021, the number had grown to 89,000. So you can kind of see by the numbers how fast this sport is growing. The LTA reveal paddle participation has increased by over 25,000% since 2019, which is just mind-boggling numbers. One of the things I've been advised on when it comes to courts is there's a regulation party called the SAPCA, which is the Code of Practice for the Construction of Paddle Courts, which is key, in my opinion, as a council to go forward, because what this does, it has an overhead of how these courts get built. It means that nobody can just turn up, price for the job, turn up with loads of tarmac on the back and just build a tennis court. It can be done, has to be done, in my opinion, to the right regulations, just to work with the LTA as well. And my last 2 points, just to finish in this, we need to lead the way in pioneering sports development like a county town should and would. And I truly believe by bringing paddle to Taunton is a really, really positive thing. Thank you. I'm going to sit down, and then if you have any questions, yeah, I'm here.
Thank you very much, Connor. Very good presentation there. Open up to questions. Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you, Connor. There's a lot of thought, a lot of research has gone into that. I'm 100% for support of this, but it's always a but, isn't there, really? Obviously, you've mentioned Taunton Green and spare court in your request and in your recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, anything connected with that would have to go to public consultation. If that public consultation and it was an overwhelming no, do we have any other sites within Taunton that we could be utilised for a paddle court? So that's one question. And I know they cost between about £45,000 to £80,000 to build. That's with different, after just quick Google search. And we have, can you get funding assistance with that from grants and stuff like that. That was the second question. And I think you also, and obviously the overwhelming thing is obviously it could and will provide income for the town council, and it could put the Taunton Town Council and Taunton Town on that. Absolutely. So yeah, so if you could, those couple of questions, Carl. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Fernandez. So in my first report dating back about 3 months ago now, I did list Taunton Green as a possible place. Only prior to me playing tennis there, obviously I've noticed over the last 2 years, the court that currently is a free court is kind of, in my opinion, not really being, it's not in the best of shape, and it gets abused. I've seen people in cycle bikes just kind of drive into the fencing, and it kind of, I think sometimes it then invites the wrong kind of interest then to Taunton Green's new courts, as I've seen damage done on Taunton courts even recently. One of the main things that I want to maintain, and I'm happy working alongside with the Option Assets, if you guys agree with this, is I want to, I'm not saying Taunton Green has to be Taunton Green. If it's not Taunton Green, we forget about it. It can be anywhere in Taunton. I just think it's key for Taunton as its county town to really lead the way in this sports. And also I was kind of doing some research last week, and in the last 5 years, the amount of tennis courts that put planning in to change tennis courts to paddle have obviously massively increased. But there's been the increase of population of paddle courts, because obviously they want to change tennis courts to paddle because the footfall means more money for businesses, whatever. What there's actually been less objections from the LTA. What was happening 5 years ago is the LTA were going, we don't want to lose traction on people playing tennis to make more profit for business. We still want to maintain that tennis is the main sport. So what they've actually done, they've compromised and actually gone, well, we can see that paddle is increasing. We have to kind of bring paddle into where it needs to, into this generation. So I'm, like I said, I am happy that anywhere in Taunton. I just think that gap between Bristol and Exeter is currently nowhere. And in the last month, I've actually heard from different people that there's actually been 2 individuals come and look at Taunton as a proposed area to bring paddle into Taunton. So I'm actually on the right area here, that there is a need for paddle in Taunton for sure. The second point about granting, currently in the last year, the LTA have granted nearly £6.9 million to the paddle. If you look at that on a national-wide scale, it's not really much, but to be honest, when you look at how much a paddle court actually costs, it's actually quite a big amount. If it was a football stadium, my God, it wouldn't even touch the grass. But this is, if for example a court's £35,000 to £40,000, and you've got a grant for 20 grand, that's nearly half the court, or whatever. So yeah, there's room there for the LTA, and also as in the past, I know Somerset Council worked with the LTA to get grant funding for the Taunton Green and Vivery Park tennis court. I'm sure we've already got contacts with the LTA, which is great. And just on your last point, Bev, you were talking about obviously it being key, to bring to put Taunton Town on the map with paddle. I totally agree, and like I said in the presentation, I think it's really important.
Yes, thank you, Connor. I would just, as the ward councillor, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning, I do know that concerns were expressed by residents when they saw that the original tennis courts, that 2 of them were being transformed by the LTA into pay to use, and very nicely done. And they were concerned that they were losing this free court. They found that having the free court available was important, and they were elderly residents. I think it will be important that we do consult local residents. I mean, if they say yes, that's fine, that's great. But but then, as I say, no, if they say no, but I do feel as a board councillor that residents would have to be consulted. Is it a sport that can go indoors?
So with paddle, so paddle can be outside or inside. Obviously, knowing that the UK currently, if you looked at a sport across the UK, you're probably losing maybe just over a third of days in the rain, if not about half. But for not much, from what I've actually spoken and I've looked at designs, is that you can have the paddle court. What they do is they put 4 pillars or 1 pillar in each corner, and then it's kind of a canvas. So it angles out to the corners. So any rain that goes on the top, it just drips out into the corners. So it's not a encapsulated box. It still lets the air through, but it kind of, you know, like I said, it's in the dry.
Yeah, I think my question was about whether it could go into the state sports venues that we have. So if we couldn't go to Taunton Green, could it be taken? Could be?
Like I said, I'm happy wherever it goes in Taunton. I think it's. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Tully, then Councillor Hans.
Thank you. Sorry, they've got a couple of questions I know. That's the picture I've got. And you said just now that they were double courts. So it is, I don't quite understand. I've got a picture showing a full tennis court.
No, so that there is the paddle court, and that is only half of the tennis court.
It's half, but definitely half. Yeah.
Okay. That is the main attraction.
So, right. Then the next thing, it is a game of tennis, isn't it? But with paddle boards rather than
pretty much just the same
one, yeah. Right? Is it recognised by Sport England? Because that makes a lot of difference.
Yeah, with the population that's currently in place, there's tournaments in Dubai. There's current tournaments.
Yeah, but is Sport England actually saying that they recognise it?
Oh yeah, 100%.
So they would probably give so much grants towards it if they thought it's worth it.
In my personal opinion, being a county town as well, I think they'd probably look at it and go, well, yeah.
And the only other thing, if we had, say, a tennis court somewhere, what is the cost of changing that over to a paddle court? It's not one from start with all the extra costs, is it?
Yeah. So one of the main factors is obviously I work in construction anyway, but one of the main things to obviously put in mind is if it was a field, you've got to look at what's under the field, which is then, you know, how far is clay down. You know, if it's a metre down, then that determines your foundations. Then you've got to fit aggregate, concrete, build it up. Obviously, being already a tennis court, you're kind of hoping that it's been built on good layers. So maybe there might have to be an inspection just on the ground beneath the existing tennis court. And then if it's all good, straight over the top, build the cage, and then carry on.
Thanks, Chair.
And I guess, Will, I did forget that you had your hand up, but I said Cara could go next, but you have to go after.
Yeah.
That's theirs.
Yeah, no, I like the idea that the aspiration that we should, you know, introduce those sports to Taunton and provide people with somewhere to play it. As Connor said, it's clearly a growth area. It sounds like fun. I'm sure it would be really appealing. So the issue will be, what would be a suitable place to have a paddle court, and then how would that all be paid for and whatnot, doodah. And then how do we get from where we are now to where we ideally want to be? So yeah, one option would be to say, well, one obvious potential site would be the free tennis court to Taunton Green, but somebody who's there every single Friday with the home ed group playing tennis there's always people on it, the free court playing tennis. So there's that. So there would have to be, for somewhere like that, we'd have to get, you know, we'd have to consult the community to say, are you willing to give up this free tennis court in order to get a paddle court, but which you pay to use? But then, so I think we need a number of options. We maybe need some alternative. I'm racking my brains to think, although yes, it has the advantage that they're smaller than tennis courts. So I think we need to do some scoping as to, if not Taunton Green, what other possible venues, including on land we own. There is a question coming because I think you touched on it, Nick. So I'm just wondering about like Wellsprings and Taunton Vale. Are there sports clubs around who are kind of sort of gone, oh, paddle, that looks interesting? Or could we at least talk to them and see if there's any mutual, identify sports clubs and see if there's any mutual interest in this? So I do think we'll have to, the recommendation, I think we might have to sort of hone it a bit to, because we don't know how much work we need to, obviously we want some scoping work done, I think is what we're saying. We support the idea and we want a way of moving forward and doing some scoping work so that then someone can go away, do a bit more hard-nosed, well, that, you could put it here, you could put it there. No, this sports club's not interested. So really, it's only a question of this option or that option, and do some background research in terms of what grants might be available and all the rest of it. Do a business case and come back to a committee with a concrete proposal. I don't know if this would sit under an existing working group if we wanted backgroundy stuff done.
I don't think it needs a working group because it's a single item, isn't it? I mean, just a single thing we want to add. So we really just need
so
we just need the operations and assets division to do some work on it. Let's go to sorry, did you want do you have a response or
yeah, one of the main things about me bringing this tonight was not to say put the money aside to spend. What I wanted to do was bring it to propose it for then you guys to take the time, and also for you guys to agree on officers' time to be spent on it. I think that's really important, that obviously if anybody's listening and stuff like that, I want to make sure that that the officers' time is obviously being agreed by committee, and also the time that's spent on it is is done right. So yeah, like I said, I've bought the facts, I've bought the presentation, I've said everything. When it comes to grants and when it comes to locations, I haven't got a Scooby-Doo on where to go for those. I haven't got the contacts, and nor I'll be truly honest, I've never been to all of the parks in Taunton. I've probably been to a few. So location-wise, I don't really know. But that's that's why I've bought it tonight, for officers to see that.
Will?
Yeah.
So be very patient, Bill.
Touch on the grant side of things, and a very, very quick Google search with the LTAs, and they do offer a loan scheme to fund it, so that could be an avenue to pursue. I can also take a more in-depth look to see what Sport England opportunities are offered. So there could potentially be funding opportunities. There's certainly at least one, but it isn't a formula loan format where you can get up to 60% of the project cost. But I can certainly take a look into that to find out what viable options are.
Yeah, I think that would be important actually, because going back to your question about the funding, isn't it? So at the moment, your proposal is that the town council fund this. So yes, I think it would be good if we can get some grants. Councillor Tully?
Yeah, as only a small one, can it be a dual purpose course? They do it with football and rugby. Could that also work with this, with tennis and paddle as dual on the same courts, but dual purpose?
Purely because of the size of the court being smaller. Tennis courts, so with a paddle racket, they're padded. So when you hit the ball obviously can't go as far as a fully tensioned tennis racket. So the courts are smaller. You wouldn't be able to play paddle on a tennis court, and you wouldn't be able to play tennis on a paddle court without making damage to probably either. So that's kind of my response to that.
Thanks.
That's fine.
Yeah, so Will clearly, we've got capacity to do the work around grants and funding, as Will has already demonstrated, because he's already done some. Who would this kind of rest with in the operations side, or would it be ops? Who
as well?
Who would be working with Will?
It is a bit of a crossover.
Good sites.
Yeah.
Good sites.
Yeah, I think to move this forward and perhaps wrap it up, I think there's strong support actually for this, and I agree with you, Connor, this is a fantastic opportunity for Taunton to really take the lead on a fast growing sport and, you know, start attracting people here. I think it's a fantastic idea and I think we should be pursuing it. We can't support the recommendation because unfortunately it's so specific to Taunton Green.
I'll be truly honest, since obviously the proposal 2-3 months ago, obviously that probably could have been updated to just what I've said,
so I would propose that that as a committee we are. Sorry, did you bring your hand up?
Well, it was just to say that there was, I think it was the first bit of the formal agenda request form when it says agenda item, insert wording to appear on the agenda. So there is a form of words which I still think that needs tweaking, but it doesn't mention Taunton Green explicitly, but it's more, so basically we want to we've considered the opportunity of bringing paddle to Taunton, agreed in principle that this will be a great thing for the town, bringing many benefits for our residents, and so we want to request, so we're requesting or saying that we want officer time to go away and do some further scoping work, including looking at possible sites, including looking at grants available and sounding out other leisure facilities in case they're interested in joint working, with a view to bringing back working up a proposal that can come back to committee.
So Ollie, I think the proposal, should we just do
that first.
I think our proposal now is that as a committee we're fully supportive of pursuing this as something we can achieve for Taunton. We're going to have to request officer time. So we propose that we devote officer time to investigate the scope of the action, identify suitable sites, including consultation with residents, and funding, and to pursue grant funding. Yes. So that's yeah. Can you just read that back to me? Check out the internals.
Oh, I've got agree on the work to undertake consultation and officers' time to do further research on the scope of bringing paddle to Taunton, identify suitable sites, and including further consultation with residents, and to pursue further funding options.
Yeah. I think we need to add that actually as the strongly supports of pursuing this. I think there's strong support for it. Okay, so that's our recommendation. Do I have a proposer? Thank you, Councillor Tudor. Would you like to second? Thank you, Councillor Fernandez. All those in favour? Yes.
It's good.
Let's go for it. So we can start the South West Paddle Championship. Yes, I know.
Championships.
I'd just like to say thank you very much for letting me bring this agenda piece this evening. I would like to just add that if you do need any help throughout the process on this, or need any navigating, or even just any, like I say, a conversation, I'd be more than welcome to be part of that.
And thank you, Anna, for bringing it to our attention and for doing research, because it's you know, you've identified a gap and somewhere where Taunton can really just shine.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good rest of the evening, everyone. And thank you again. Good. Thank you.
Right. Item number 7. We have the business continuity plans, Deane House and the depot. And this is Angela.
Thank you. Good evening, members. Before you tonight is probably much duller than paddleboard, so my apologies. But this is a whilst it's not a requirement of the Contingencies Act, it is something that I think as a town council we do need, and that is business continuity plans for Deane House and the depot. Now, business continuity plan is basically a plan that should there be some disruption to service, then we are able to shortly within a period of time get back up and running on a day-to-day basis. Now, it's not the demand, it doesn't give us all the answers, but it does actually start that process and build some foundations for us. What the plans do in both cases identify the sort of like what they call the 5 Ps, the 5 potential areas of disruption. So premises, so that would be the loss of this building or the depot. Power, so that's loss of utilities in some shape or form. People, so loss of staff, in particular loss of the town clerk or the deputy town clerk. Processes will be things like cyber attacks or loss of information. And provider is basically a disruption potentially to our stakeholders or our suppliers. So they're called the 5 Ps, and each of those are dealt with in the plan based on the building in which the plan is about, whether it's the Deane house or the depot. So there's some slight differences between the plans, although some broadly similar across both plans for obvious reasons. It is very much about us as an internal organisation. This doesn't, and interestingly, the conversation we had last night at the Personnel Committee about the adverse weather policy, the policy complements these plans, but this is very much about us as an organisation, and in order for us to continue to provide service. I think that's about as much as I want to say. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Councillor Ellis, you quick off the mark.
Yeah, because I had an immediate question. I mean, it might be in here. I've speed read this document several times, and I can't remember if I saw it. So obviously, I think lots of standard stuff in here, so it's all very sensible. Obviously, when the depot, we actually got it all up and running now, the depot. So I'm thinking that going up in flames, for example, that is a flipping disaster. I mean, I'm just trying to imagine disasters that might befall our operation, I can see if this bit went up in whatever, we couldn't, I don't know, what would happen to this? I don't know.
Well,
we couldn't use our office.
Council, so it's
not their problem. That's easy to deal with, isn't it? That's not so bad. But if you've got your depot where you've got all of your vehicles and you've got your charging and stuff, you've got all of your supplies, and if that, I mean, also because it's, that would be a total disaster, because also it's, we've got all our tenants as well. But where do those vehicles, is there a sort of plan B as to, rather than just sort of starting at that point, once it has blown up, to say, oh, where can we just ring somebody and ask where we could go? Is there an idea about what the plan B is? Is there some old depot somewhere we could hijack, or what?
Can I just follow on from that? Because I read that depot with the Deane house. I thought, well, we don't own it, our landlords would have some obligation to perhaps, but I'm surprised by that. But yes, the depot is now ours, we own it. I was looking at what the contingency would be, and again, there's a major fire, whether we started it or was one of our people who we rent to. Could we utilise our pavilions in the parks?
There is a potential to use. There is a potential to use pavilions. The idea basically is that, and we are don't get me wrong, we're in somewhat of a fortunate position, because obviously if we do lose units 3 and 4, and hopefully only 3 and 4, the prospect of using Trafalgar House as a whole, it's not something I want to go down to. But if we do use 3 and 4, excuse me, from a staff base, they can come back and work here like they've been doing since we've been doing the refurbishment. If it's more major and it's a fire, and it affects obviously our equipment or whatever, then it becomes a bigger issue, because that is about insurance and etc. etc. So there are sort of different factors, but in simple terms, and I don't mean that patronisingly, but in simple terms, if there's something happens to the depot, we would come back here. If something happened here, we would go to the depot, and that's the idea. I think the problem when you try to write these sorts of plans is you're trying to write them for something you don't know, you don't know what's going to happen, and so therefore you do put it as a slightly, probably a superficial level, but then when you get into the bones of something, as Councillor Ellis' example, when you get into the bones of something like that, then that's when you have to start unpicking actual fact, the practicalities come in. Well, let's make an immediate insurance claim, So this just gives you the plans. And having worked at Stage Moor and with Somerset Council in the past on these sort of things, they very much give you the bones and the foundation on which to build the more practical approach based on the circumstances you face. And this is never going to be the nirvana to actually, it's fine, it's sorted. This just gives you that foundation and those bones in which to actually is actually straightforward. And we've kept it relatively simple so that at least we can have those, oh right, okay, we'll just do this, we'll do that. At least you can start to have those conversations and start to pick the pieces up and move forward.
Any other? Councillor Tully?
Yeah, I've read it through. I'm just going through it a second time, see if I'm making this, if I'm missing. The one thing that's not in there, the one thing that could go really wrong and causes a lot of problems, if we have a fire and the computer system and all the files disappear, there's nothing saying to have a backup system somewhere else. Now, we did that in the PHLS because they were panicking. That if something really serious did happen, that we could have a backup system which we can go straight into, so we haven't lost the main information.
Yeah, we have our systems based on the cloud.
Yeah, basically to a certain extent, we transfer some of our risk in respect of our IT systems because Cloudy IT provide our servers and store our information, and as Councillor O'Donnell said, they store it in the cloud. So restoring our information is not necessary, is not difficult because they back it up at a fairly rapid rate in comparison to the old days. So that the information would never be lost in that respect. So we don't have to worry about that. If there is a fire and there was, shall we say, a fire at the depot, probably the biggest worry is actually getting replacement equipment in. And making sure we had enough equipment here to support everybody to do that. That would probably be the biggest concern. But overall, our data, I believe our data is safe. I don't know if Marcus would agree with me, but our data is safe because it's in the cloud and it's backed up. So
thank you.
Any other comment? I mean, I take it all the vehicles, we lost the use of the depot. We've got a lot of vehicles there. Could they come to the car park here, or could they?
Well, we're doing that now, aren't we? In some respects. So to a certain extent, we are using certainly the Deane House car park at the back. They'll use the circle if needs be. So we're actual fact we're sort of almost doing some of the stuff now already. Whilst we've got lots of pockets of storage. At the end of the day, we're making it work. And obviously, when depot reopens, and then obviously they'll go back in.
Contingency if we lose both the depot and Deane House.
Well, I don't think you can plan for that at all.
Right. Well, I'm not sure there's too much more. Happy to propose this. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Yeah,
second it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Tully. Right, all those, so the recommendation, so I better read the recommendations. Members to agree to the business continuity plans for Deane House and the depot, and I think based on what we've heard and what we've read, I'm happy to propose it. Councillor Tully is happy to second it. All those in favour? Lovely. Thank you very much. So, I believe. So next one. Section 106 play parks application. So we're going to consider the recommendations which are going to go to full council to submit a full application to seek £19,578 or section 106 funding from the parcels of land on Bodmin Road, Rochester Road, Wells Close, Cambridge. And Rochester Road. S106 code 18465 to install a new piece of play equipment at Priorswood Park. And we're also to consider the recommendation to full council to use up to £5,398.49 funding from the play equipment budget for the safety servicing of the area where the new piece of play equipment is to be installed. And this is Will.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So yeah, as you introduced there, we did also agree on an amendment to the first recommendation to also delegated authority to go to the town clerk in conjunction with the chair of the Operations and Assets Committee to pick the piece of play equipment following the closure of the public consultation that is currently outstanding.
We'll add that at the end.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, this is seeking permission or a recommendation to full council to submit a full application for section 106 funding. We have already submitted an expression of interest, and Somerset Council have invited us to make full application, citing a few points to consider, one of which is that it cannot be used to remove and replace an item of equipment. It has to be used to increase capacity to the park, and so we're taking action on that with the maintenance by removing a piece of play equipment that is currently unsafe and not fit for purpose. And so in terms of the public consultation, we've we've got a survey on at the minute, received around 150 responses, play equipment, which is very good, very healthy. We also sent letters to certain stakeholders within the group, such as Pricewood Community Centre, Pricewood Primary School, Pricewood Library, and a few other local schools within the area. In terms of a basic timeline, so we submitted the year on the 16th of May. We're going to also letters now, and full council decision that decision here. We will then look to get a subject for application with an anticipated last date for response by the 18th of July. With the latest date for submitting invoices of the 7th of November. Funding needs to be spent by the 11th of November. I think, as per the section 106 agreement, which is currently held by Somerset Council. Otherwise, I will open it up to any questions.
So just a bit of background for members. We had a Parks working group last night, and we saw what the outcome for what is in the lead for the consultation at the moment for the piece of play equipment that's to be replaced. There was concern that it didn't quite address the parks review. We want to try and see if we can get the option that's currently in the lead, but also the option that's currently second place, which is the large wheelchair roundabout. So we want to investigate the idea to get both, which means we've got to find some other funding from elsewhere. And the reason for the third recommendation that we delegate powers not only to the clerk but also to myself, so that we can make a quick decision without having to recall the Ops and Assets Committee, but also that, well, as we can discuss now, I think it's important for this committee that if we are going to choose equipment, that yes, we do find what the public pretty much have voted for, but that actually do make a commitment to our pledge to provide more disabled DDA equipment. So if we can agree with that, then that's for me to make sure that the clerk makes that choice. Councillor Fernand.
Thanks, Chair. Now, I wholeheartedly agree that you should have a large wheelchair roundabout. They need to have accessible equipment in there as well. I'm just wondering, can the ward members' initiative scheme be used for any of this?
Yes, it can be used for items of equipment. We can also use community infrastructure levy as well, should we need to do so. Obviously, we will need committee approval for either of those avenues, but that can be pursued. We are in the process of quoting to get the two pieces of equipment that are currently in the lead, one of which does include accessible wheelchair roundabout, but we are still waiting for quotes back as to how much that work will cost and whether or not that can be included within the section 106 funding, should we be successful in getting that funding.
Thanks, well, so it may be worth getting in touch with would that be Councillor Cornwall?
Yes, it would.
Yeah, this falls into the category of no-brainer, doesn't it, really? We can access external funds and we can improve the park for the benefit of residents. I note that the consultation on the new equipment is still ongoing, so people have until, I've just checked, Monday the 16th of June. Presumably, there's like a is there just like a thing on our website and you just email, or is there like you just have a box to tick or something? I want this one, that one, the other one.
Yeah, so there's a survey out where people can choose the item of equipment that they would prefer to have in the park based on one of 6 different options.
Has that been like heavily shared on the Priorswood Facebook groups, sort of, and repeat shared?
I can have a talk with our communications team to see if they can push that a bit further in those specific groups. I know it was posted on Facebook. It also got a Gazette article written about it. 154-ish responses so far and growing hopefully, but yeah, with the secondary push we can definitely get more responses on that.
Yeah. So I think what we were, because we had quite a big discussion this last night, and I think we really want to honour what the residents' top choice is, whilst also improving accessibility and inclusivity in our parks, because that was the whole point of our strategy in the first place. So it sounded like we might be able to do both, which would be a win-win-win. So I'm strongly supportive as long as we can get the wording that we can once the consultation is over. Whatever the public have chosen, yep, you can have that. Plus, we'll have a piece of accessible equipment so that then you've got the flexibility to get that all in motion.
Yeah. And then as you said, we can. I mean, obviously, I take it that 2 pieces of equipment are going to be beyond the 19,000.
We are in the process of obtaining quotes. I don't know how much that will cost exactly. I know that because we are taking removal of the piece of equipment that wasn't fit for purpose in-house, rather than getting the company to remove it, we will save some money because that was previously how it's been included within the quotation. So once we've got those quotations for both pieces of play equipment, we will have a better understanding of exactly how much the Section 106 funding can cover.
I mean, I think this will have to come back to committee once we've.
So the recommendation for the first recommendation is to recommend to full council. So it will have to go through full council.
So that's to submit the full, to submit the application.
Yes, that's correct.
But once if we are successful in getting the money, if we will have to come back to committee to agree an overspend. It will spend the 19,000 on what comes out as the first choice, and then
it depends on how much these quotes will be. I'm afraid. Yeah, everything that was quoted for in terms of the 6 options provided was within that 19,570.
Yes.
But obviously, with wanting 2 items of play equipment, we're not sure exactly how much that will cost.
And so none of those 6 options cost more than 19,000. I think it's a board member scheme. So we need to add a third recommendation that the final decision is delegated to the clerk and chair of operations and assets. So the final decision on play equipment to be installed is delegated to the clerk and chair of operations and assets.
You can just make an amendment to the first recommendation to add that to the end if you want.
Yes. The clerk and final decision on what equipment be delegated to the clerk and chair of operations and assets, so that I can take forward the committee view, and it should, whatever we put there, should also, and I will stress also, include the large wheelchair roundabout.
Sorry, yeah, can I just say that it has to be a delegation to the clerk and in consultation with the ops, because you can't delegate to an individual council.
It's in consultation.
Yeah, in consultation. Okay. Okay. Ollie, could you just feedback once you finished that? Can you just feedback recommendation 1?
So up until the end of Priorswood Park.
Yeah.
With members to give delegated powers to the town clerk in conjunction with the chair of the operations and assets committee depict a new piece of play equipment pending the results
Pieces.
of the public consultation. Is that including the accessible?
Are we happy with that? Do I have a proposer? Thank you, Councillor Evans. Seconder? Thank you, Councillor Fernandez. All those in favour of those three recommendations, as now two recommendations, and amend. All in favour of the amended recommendation number 1 and recommendation number 2. Okay. Right. So back to play parks. So things have moved on with the play parks review and our work on our play parks. So we've got 5 recommendations here. 1, to consider the recommendation to full council, so this has got to go to full council next week, to seek a tendering process of up to £1.2 million as per the play parks accessibility report to develop the play equipment within all 12 parks that contain play equipment under control. Members consider public consultation with the published play parks accessibility review report to allow residents to decide on the status of each park. Members to consider pursuing a Section 106 opportunity from the Cold Orchard development 3818 0185 for £63,968.51 to help with funding this project, and members to consider pursuing a funding bid to the National Lottery Reaching Communities Fund to contribute funding towards this project. And finally, members to consider the recommendation to full council to allow funding from EMR budgets 342 and 343 to be used towards the project. And if I can ask,
Extra one, it's not on the report.
yeah, yes, the 5th one. Just read it.
Must have got a different version of the report when I published it.
Will, would you like to? Your author of the report, would you like to?
Yes, yeah. I'll actually support. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, apologies about that 5th one. I must have sent Ollie the wrong report. I do apologise for that. So yeah, so this is asking for a recommendation to full council to seek a tendering process for the parks, a public consultation for the for the members of the public to decide on what categorization of the park. So in September we had a playback accessibility review carried out, which assessed each park based on its inclusivity, accessibility and play value, giving each park a score on each, and then using that score it used them to determine local neighbourhood destination parks. And so the public consultation is to allow the vote to decide what park should be a destination park, which is defined as destination areas using the name or one for only a few larger areas that would cater for all ages and abilities with excellent access. Families who often travel to a town or city to visit the site, and good car parking and public transport near the site is critical, along with appropriate pathways and cycleways. A neighbourhood park, which is the next road down, is usually a medium to large site that is the main playground for a specific neighbourhood. However, it may attract users to other locations such as friends and families meetings, or the families on site are better equipped. It will likely be used by a variety of ages and abilities who will spend more time at the site and possibly drive or cycle to access the play area. And then the smallest tangent is a local park, which is a medium-sized play area that may cater for all 6 ages. However, that is most likely going to be used by children and the families living in the immediate vicinity. That is not dedicated by the equipment, rather the location and general design primarily used by younger children. The play areas and for shorter periods of time will be accessed by walking to the site. In addition, to this is seeking to apply for additional funding via a Section 106 opportunity as well as the National Lottery. Currently, the project, which the accessibility report recommended a maximum spend of up to £1.2 million, currently has an available expenditure of £262,246 via the EMR 342 play equipment and a budget of £150,000 for play parks accessibility enhancements. The code 396701 in the current financial year, and the EMR 343 for parking. So that is the need to pursue these other two funding opportunities to cover the other spend should it be necessary. I will open the floor to any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Bill. So, just to add to what Will said, so February last year, full council, we agreed to do a overview and a complete review of all our parks in terms of their accessibility, inclusivity, and play value. That review was finally published last September, and which, as Will said, categorised all our parks, and I have to say I do agree with you. Well, I think we do need to look at their designations, because the park nearest me, Greenway Rec, even in discussion with some of my residents, that they don't see it as a neighbourhood park, they only see it as a local park, mainly because you can't park within half a mile of it because of resident parking. So I think we do need to look at reclassification, but also looking at the question was whether how we were as a council going to pursue this. So we set up the working group to see how we were going to pursue updating our parks in line with this review, and with the aim of whatever we do to our parks would improve the score values of those parks. Things have moved on now in the sense that we are looking now, rather than doing this ourselves, we are now looking at a tender for companies to come and do all our parks, and that's to include both the play equipment, but also the surfacing and everything to do the accessibility of that park. So the review originally quoted anywhere that we should spend anywhere between 800,000 to 1.2 million, which is why this tender process is for up to 1.2 million in line with the park review. I've just got a few questions myself, and then I'll turn to Councillor Ellis. So yes, I'll let the rest you on. So the company will do all the consultation. So the question is, the destination parks have been described as parks that anyone from across the town would use. So how do you consult on those type of parks?
Good question. So essentially that would be putting it out to as wide audience as you possibly can. We will put in with the tender and put that the responsibility of the company that wins the tender to do so, and do how they see fit to consult the maximum amount of people for each scale of park. Obviously, as you said, destination parks will require a bigger radius of people, so how they do that will be determined down to them. They're the experts in this field. They, in theory and by the tender, will have certain points that they need to hit within that as to how they consult, and certain points that they need to know in terms of doing the public consultation, finding out what equipment the public want for those specific types of parks on whatever geography that may be.
And my second question was, so we're tendering for up to 1.2 million. I mean, they might come back and say it's a lot less, which would be wonderful, but I'm conscious that at the moment we've only got in our budgets and earmarked reserves 500,000. And so if a company comes back and says, oh, you're costs, you know, we can charge you £1 million. We can say, well, we've got £500,000. What happens then? Because I mean, unless we find the other £500,000 or we don't get the grants, what does the company do then?
So the tender will say this is subject to funding. We have so much secured currently, but we are actively pursuing avenues to do so. So that will be covered in the tender. The company that wins the tender will be very aware of how much money we've got committed and that we are actively pursuing other areas. The entire project is expected to be over a 5-year plus project, so there is time within that to secure the funding should we see necessary.
So my last question would be, when we put out to tender, can we say, you know, you give us your quote, but what can you do if you've only got for 500,000? How much of that would you do for 500,000? And then what can you do additionally if we get more money? I mean, would they have say, okay, well, this is how much this is all going to cost, but if you've only got £500,000, then we will do this. If you've got £600,000, we can do this. And would we put out the tender like that? So I don't know if I've made it express myself well there, but I'm just conscious that we're going to get that quote and not actually guarantee the money. But they could quote for the amount of money we have got and other options for. If they quote for different options of how much money we have.
That could be explored. I will double check with our procurement officer as to what the specifics are going to be in the tender, but I think that if we want to do it like that, we presumably can. But yeah, the tender will say that it's subject to funding, and so that should be covered within that tender document.
Councillor Ents?
Yeah, in principle, yes, we need to do, you know, an upgrade on our parks in terms of the, you know, just the basic, you know, sort of standard of equipment, but and enhance it, have extra play equipment, you know, all the rest of it, make it more accessible and inclusive generally. And we've had this previous consultant report which flagged various things up and do our day, but it didn't drill down to this park specifically needs X, Y, Z, and recommend to do X, Y, Z. I realise actually now I'm getting even more confused the more I think about this, because so if you look at the first recommendation, it's not just developing the play equipment, is it? It's the, unless we're not going to be separating that from the issue about the ground condition of the ground and stuff underneath the play equipment and the routes from paths to the play equipment, because it's all part and parcel of accessibility and usability, isn't it? So I don't think the recommendation quite expresses the job of work that we're actually putting out to tender. I think we need to really clarify what it is. So is this is to work up a concrete plan and strategy, including for each park. So they say, well, priority one should be this park, and this is what we recommend happens. There's consultation requirements. They have to consult and engage on that. And then is it them doing the work as well, providing the equipment, doing the work? So it's a whole package, but it doesn't quite, the recommendation doesn't quite express that from my point of view. And then there's a sort of stemming from that, following on from that as well, who's going to so there'll be a scoping spec thing. I don't know if that's drafted yet, but I think there needs to be some democratic oversight of what the spec says, just to make sure that there's such a big contract that, you know, I would expect us to have a little butchers just in case something is missed out. I'm sure it wouldn't be, but you know, so is that possible? How would that work? And this thing about, I don't know why we pulled out consultation just about the status of parks. We're only going to ask people about this. That's not us anyway. That's going to be part of the tender, and there's going to need to be broader engagement than that. So I don't know why that's singled out. I agree we need to go forward, but I want it honed a bit, the recommendation, so that we're very clear what we're agreeing to. And of course, you know, and vis-a-vis the tender, I mean, it'll have to be clear, the scope has to be clear that we've got X amount to spend. We want to spend it. We do not want to spend 2 years faffing about and saying, oh, what should we do? What should we do? and money's just sat there because, you know, in some of our parts, the need for change is urgent because as soon as you get bad weather, you know, a lot of equipment is unusable because the ground's all, you know, because the stuff underneath the equipment isn't okay, the ground is all messed up, and it, you know, for some places this is kind of quite urgent. So I think it has to be, you've got a minimum of this has to be done, but ideally we're going to get this extra money, so they'll have to just work within that and scale up, scale back as required. But it's just that the recommendations they're not quite tight enough for my liking.
Yeah, I'll talk to you in a second, Paul, but I do agree. I mean, this whole process kick-started when I tried to replace some equipment in my Clark. Just to replace a single slide, and I mean, that's nearly 18 months ago, and nothing's happened, and I'm getting conscious that actually time is dragging on, and my residents have been very patient. They haven't criticised, they haven't, and I'm very grateful to them. But I'm conscious that we really do need to start pushing this forward now fast. Paul.
Yes, thank you. It's for that very reason that we're proposing putting it out to tender. The tender has to have an estimated value against it to go on the tendering website. That is been obviously agreed at 1.2 million based upon the original report to go over a 5-year spend. If we can gain the extra funding that is alluded to within the proposal, then that's a bonus to us. Otherwise, the play parks amount over those 5 years should pay for this project anyway. The firms that have expressed an interest on the initial letter before tender, which has gone on the website, I believe there are at least 7 companies that have come back to us. They are experts in their field. They deal with councils all the time, and they are used to the type of consultations that councils require in order to make those informed decisions. Those decisions will be made through a committee, which will include members of the council, not just officers, and that so that full scrutiny can be given to the proposals that come in, and we're able to evaluate them against each other effectively and come up with the right option. So we have to have some of that detail in there to be able to go to tender in the first place. Hopefully that explains why it's structured in that way.
Will McKenna.
Yes, I just wanted to highlight Councillor Ellis 4.2. The reason why that was singled out to have a public consultation is because we will conduct that specific public consultation in-house. The rest of the public consultations for each park will be carried out within the tender by the company once the tendering process is being completed. But the public consultation to allow residents to decide on which park is a destination neighbourhood and local park will be undertaken by us, so that we have a categorical list of which parts of destination, and then you can work your way down, starting at destination down to local.
Okay, so Karen, Ray.
I still don't like I'm absolutely with the spirit of this thing. What I can't, I'm sorry, this is my brain. I don't like it when there's wording that is not actually what we're talking about. The wording in number 1 talks about to develop the play equipment. We're not just developing the play equipment. It's not, it doesn't, that's only one element of it. So that needs to be changed, because otherwise you can't just say, oh, well, we all know what we're talking about, but the wording is not what we're actually going to be voting on. We're voting on a much bigger, wider, broader project than that. So that needs to be facilities, you know, it's like, I don't know, shoving facilities to develop the play equipment and facilities and improve the inclusivity, something that needs to be, it needs to do what we're actually intending in the wording. I mean, I just think that's important. It just does my head in otherwise. I do think that I'm quite happy if you want to have a consultation about the, I wouldn't, I'm not sure that's really would be my priority.
Yes, Ray.
Okay. Thank you. I agree with you, Carol. I agree with you. That's a park not far from here, which I think is probably the best in the county. The developers actually went around and asked what people wanted. And in part of their report, they said A park is from 1 year old to 100. Every pair, and that park is perfect. Worth having a look at if you want to. It's Creek St Michael. It's worth to look at. And I think St Albans done the same thing in one of their parks. You need to include everybody. The park in Creek St Michael is made for toddlers, for the older ones, and then the big paying ones, and plus elderly people. So we do the consultation needs to be a good, not just someone send a couple of leaflets out. It's not good enough.
Yeah, that's it. It was just again talking about wording on recommendations. We're about public consultation. I think it's also in there. You need to put in that the friends of groups as well. It's all of those that's within. It's not just residents. It's the friends of groups. It's just again, it's that slightly.
That will be included within the tender document. This is about going forward with the tender, and that tender document will be available for everybody to see. Will include references to those groups specifically, and others that have already been recommended to us that we need to include and consult with, that we might not have even bothered with beforehand, to be quite honest. With regard to detail about the play equipment in item 1, it's covered within the scope of the play parks accessibility review to say that it isn't just the play equipment, it's all the other peripheral stuff that goes with it. So it's already covered off within that existing report. And number 1 is just to say we want to get the tender out to deal with it.
So I'm wondering whether it should, number 1 should say 1.2 million as per the play parks accessibility report to improve the parks in line with the recommendations made by that report. Would that?
Yeah.
Yep.
It can't say what it says now because that's not what we're doing. We're not just doing a play equipment jolly, and it can't read it. It needs to be accurate. What we're voting on needs to be accurately reflect what's going to happen.
I'll be able to change recommendation 1.
Yeah, but I'll need you to vote on time extension now, pretty much.
I'll be able to change that in the 2 minutes now.
Yeah, I know, but just to do it now so we don't.
Okay. Proposer to extend our time. Seconder. All those in favour? Carried. I do feel sorry for the officers. They don't get to vote in that one. I'm very sorry. Of course, that has completely wiped my mind of how I expressed recommendation 1.
Haven't you already?
It was, as per the play parks accessibility report, to
Improve
the
accessibility,
no,
inclusivity,
to improve
standard.
all our play parks in line with the recommendations laid out in the report, in all the recommendations. Do we need to put in the parentheses accessibility, inclusivity, and play value? Yeah, let's have that as a
Yeah,
as
let's
well.
have that in.
Can we have red back colour?
Yes.
So we got it right.
To recommend full council to seek a tendering process of up to 1.2 million as per the play parks accessibility report to improve the parks in line with all the recommendations of the report, and then in brackets, is it inclusivity, accessibility, and what's
And play value.
Yeah.
play value?
That's right.
Does that sound?
That's a bit better. Yeah, I can't do it. I can't vote on something that is not actually what we're doing.
And well, do we need to add number 5?
What's
Yeah, so number 5 just covers the EMR budget, which I submitted previously in the report for 342 equipment and 343, which is currently held in earmark reserves.
As it's on the front sheet, it's fine.
Okay.
Just lacking the report.
Okay. All right. So, are we happy to take those 5 recommendations to full council?
Yeah.
Right. So that, do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Fernandez. All those in favour? Lovely, thank you. Right. Would anyone like a 5-minute break just to go?
Yes, I need a drink. and
Officers,
vote.
do you need to go get a cup of tea?